two elements that are ongoing in the context of such a crazy idea as cosmic dust, time, and space in the Hudson Valley, and that is the photographs from outer space that were just presented by the James Webb Telescope right in the middle of our studio.
I went back to the etymology of words. The word space cognates with the ancient Greek word spao, which means to break. Basically, these models are suggestive to show this roughness from the inside and how it could also be open, having ideas of cracks, and how also there could be moments of light coming in.
Also thinking about the Japanese kintsugi, which is the art of repairing broken pottery with gold, and how you might think about, not just breaking things being broken, but also like how you might then start to sort of weave these things and knit them back together into something.
One of the things that came to mind was the history of dirt and association dust, which we actually know very little of, but what we do know is that our sun is too young and cool to manufacture anything heavier than helium. So a lot of these things that we have here on Earth actually come from this cosmic explosion.
Something that's really successful, I think, in my view, is we perceive as unstable on the outside, it becomes stable on the inside.
With my project, I seek to create an unearthly architecture that explores and occupies the transient space between the homely and the cosmic. The center of the cosmos is really nowhere and everywhere at once. I thus introduce three alien forms onto the site that conform not to the singular centrality of the Earth, but to multiple cosmic nuclei, which then communicate with the earthly space by unleashing bursts of beams to touch, connect, and frame an in-between space among the familiar and the alien. The architecture simultaneously becomes a preposition between humans and the cosmos.
The concept is unearthliness, but then it's kind to the earth, it's kind to that site.
What I found fascinating about it is that if I went there, I would feel terror. I would experience this kind of awe and fear in your project.
My project, Dead Ice Inhabiting a Cosmic Ghost, began with the geologic formation of Round Lake, which evolved over centuries after the rupture of a dead ice fragment from a wandering glacier. Through material experiments with ice, I began to reconsider our relationship with time. Instead of conceptualizing it as linear motion, the lake presents evidence of time as a sectional reality, building upon each previous moment in space. My project's life cycle of eventual disappearance while maintaining a new and lasting presence mirrors the temporal and geologic transformation of the lake by creating a sort of inhabitable ghost.
If you look at time and you think about the earth eroding, it actually acts like a liquid. It's so fascinating in terms of the relationship of what we build to the natural world and the sort of time span that we need to really start to think within in order to build things that are more in harmony with the natural world.
What this project puts before me is the idea that we exist within a relatively small fragment of a much larger process.
The universe is expanding in all directions, yet in some parts it is collapsing. A black hole starts with a star that burns out and is pulled by its gravitation into a singularity. As this happens, the surrounding time and space fold in on themselves, while other matter is ejected, thus creating a contradiction. This dichotomy, where something escapes from what is becoming nothing, a form of recursive folding, is the driving force in this project.
Is the landscape just the ground plane? Or is it a continuum, right, that goes, because you have things growing on the ground plane, you have trees, you have plants, you have the air getting thinner and thinner and thinner as you go up, right, into the upper atmosphere, right? So there are things that are tangible and intangible, visible and invisible.
This is almost like an instrument or a tool of measure that you've inserted into the landscape.
One thing that was especially meaningful for me as a participant in the T-Space program was the degree to which I was welcomed into this residency as an artist. A parcel is very unusual to me. It's an accepted legal historical boundary. It is a very firm and rigid line. If you cross it, you are trespassing. At the same time, in some ways, it's an invisible line. The geometry of that and the meaning kind of bound up into that was very interesting to me.
It's a very special project, and I think that it's an opportunity on something that somehow is missing, has been missing, I think, from all the projects, which is a kind of necessary dialectical relationship, purely in the Hegelian sense that, a dialectical relationship is that for everything there exists the opposite. There is its opposite. And this opposite is the opposite between the artifact and nature.
I really like the idea that you had of the folding and the Dymaxion maps and how that act of folding leads you to have things together and not together, right, in different ways that lets you start to question relationships. And I think that that's really, really interesting. Even the notion of Pangea, right, which was something that was together that then split apart.
The project I had developed is titled Torn Egg, Stillness and Motion, and it seeks to explore the notion that we observe the universe in its stillness of motion, an expanding abyss in constant flux, geometrically conceivable through moments frozen in time. The pure form of an egg as origin is torn in tension with the platonic solids which have historically shaped our formal planar certainty. A space of limbo speaking to memories of origin and contradiction, while allowing the visitors to peer into the landscape and reflect upon the timely questions of the cosmos.
All of this kind of hit me right in the retinas, and the project is pretty mind-blowing.
That kind of roughness, you're used to really thinking about it as something that would be more solid and more opaque, right? But then you think about the eggshell and how that is a sort of tough but fragile and also translucent.
There's this kind of grounded feeling of the orthogonal space, but you look into this glowing spherical space. I think it could go back to what Ilya said earlier, that it's not a dialectic anymore, because when you throw in the cosmos and you realize that the center of our galaxy is a black hole 16 million times the diameter of the sun, there is this sort of feeling of the unknown and the beyond, and the fact that we're just discovering these things as we work as architects. And to me, that's something kind of exciting.